Christmas. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm Michelle Doggett-Clarke.
I'm Victoria Clarke-Jones.
And we're really happy to be here today. This is our first podcast that we're doing on our new show. We have a special name for it. It's called Sondervous, or how do you pronounce it? How would you pronounce it, Vicky?
I think it's I was kind of confused if it's Sondezvous, like rendezvous, or Sondervous. And I think it's Sondervous, right? Sonder's the main word there.
Sondervous, yes. So there is a very interesting story behind the name. We'll probably talk about that next time. It is definitely a whole episode worthy. But yeah, we're just happy to be here and thank you guys for joining us. And the theme of our very first podcast today is Christmas. So as you can see, we have our little warm fireplace there and Christmas tree there, and we got some Christmas hats.
So we're going to be jingling the whole time. So when I talk, I tend to get very passionate. So yeah, you might catch some bells.
Yeah. And I have not held out on you either. I've got Christmas album shoes.
Yeah.
So we wanted to, just try to have a little bit of fun and relax because it is the first time and we are maybe a little bit nervous. Yeah, we also just wanted to try it out, put ourselves out there, step a little bit out of our comfort zones, and just see what conversations can be like between sisters, family, friends, and just kind of creating a space where we can chat and share about our unique life experiences. So we want to start off maybe with a little bit of introduction about who we are and what we're doing now at this point in our lives. Vix, you want to go first?
Yeah, so obviously my name is Victoria and I am a family life coach or family resilience coach. That is what I coach on. So I started off working with kids, young age, because that's my background. I was a teacher before. And then I started moving more to older kids as well. I incorporated that into my practice because that's where a lot of the challenges we see start really emerging. And then throughout the course of my learning, I kind of realized that it all came back down to parents, right? And I think this is where my journey started as well. And obviously I'll go into that maybe in a little bit, but parents really play a huge part in the mental health and the development of their kids. So I incorporated parent coaching. And now I into the classroom with the kids, engaging with teachers as well, because teachers also play a huge part in our children's upbringing. So working with teachers and in schools as well. So that's a little bit about what I do professionally. Personally, I am a mom and stepmom of 5 kids from 11 to 21. I've got 2 dogs. I live in Colorado. So my husband is actually, we kind of are a blended family, and my husband is originally English and moved to the US probably almost 30 years ago now. Me and Michelle have some English heritage and background, so I think that's probably why me and my husband connected. And yeah, we've been living in our community for probably about 5 years now, and it's been great. I love Colorado. It's very different to the places that we grew up in, which is back in Asia. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hey, thanks, Vix. It's really nice to hear you talk about your stepkids. We had the chance to meet them. When was it? Was it earlier? No, not this year. Last year. Last year, summertime. You and Mike and the stepkids and Harry as well. So it was really good to see them. Good to see you guys. We did a little bit of karaoke one night with Mike and Vix. They are awesome singers, by the way. They've got a cover band. You should definitely watch them. They recently did a gig was it Halloween?
Yes, we did a Halloween gig. It was great. It was so much fun. It was all in costume, so it was really silly, but
it was so fun to watch. You guys look so great, and you sound great as well.
I mean, this is kind of what we're going to be talking about today, about performances, and that it seems to be in our blood, right? We grew up this way. Yeah. And
Mm.
so, tell us about yourself, Mush, or we call her Mush Michelle, but
Yes.
you'll hear us
Yes.
call each other weird nicknames. This is
Yeah, so my nickname, you will hear Vix calling me Mush or Mushy. I think I picked up this name maybe when I was around 13 or 14. I think it was at some youth camp, and then it kind of just stuck with me, and everyone still calls me, who knows me from that time, Mush or Mushy. Sounds a little weird, but yeah, it's a term of endearment. And for you, I think when we called you Vicky mostly growing up, and
growing
then
up. Yeah,
within that last couple of years, I think it's with switching over to Vix and then sometimes Victoria. So you'll hear all of
yeah,
the above. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I live in the UK. I'm here with my little girl. Her name's Jane. She's 3. I have another 2 boys, Ryan and Broderick. They live in Toronto. And yeah, it's been a long journey for me. I didn't think that I would end up here in the UK, but I'm here now and I'm putting down roots and learning to yeah, create and build a new life. Um, Let me see, anything I can tell about myself. Okay, I'm currently writing a book, just to, kind of explain and share a little bit about my personal experiences. I'm also studying to become a counselor, and I'm also working on a trauma care course, and that speaks to my own personal journey and the things that I've recently been going through in the past couple of years. And yeah, I'm probably at the point where it's kind of coming full circle, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more at home. Um, yeah, that's probably what I could say for now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, what is like, we came up with this idea for a podcast,
Mm.
kind of gradually over time. And I know we kind of did like,
Mm.
yes, we will, no, we won't, yes, you will. And then you were like, let's do something for Christmas because Christmas is kind of the time of year. We're going to share some stories around it, but it seems to be a lot about kind of giving back in a way. I guess that's what our
Mm.
parents taught us, that Christmas was a time of year to give back to others, but Christmas was a time um, where it was, Jesus's birthday. So we grew up very religious, fundamentalist religious, so really hardcore religion. And we were taught that this is the time of year that a lot of people are, searching for answers. Maybe they're having issues with their own personal families. And so this was the time of year to share the message of Christmas, which was about Jesus and Jesus's birth. And
Mm.
so more so than any other time of year, I think there was a very big emphasis on Christmas being a time to give back and performances. So we did that
Mm.
through, I guess,
Mm.
dancing and singing. We used to go to a lot of anything that was kind of charitable based, and we
Mm.
would go into and we started from, I think I remember the first memory I have of kind of dressing up. I remember being a little white angel costume and little wings and a little halo. I was
Yeah.
probably about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And I just remember standing out in front with a bunch of older kids, also
Mm.
from our group, a bunch of older kids, and just singing for people that walked past. I think we were in front of a hotel or something. So
Mm.
yeah, that's my earliest memory of kind of Christmas performing. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I have probably, I don't know if it's the same memory, but a similar memory of being
Wow.
dressed just in white garb. Don't know how, angelic it was, but it did do. I have some memories, and I remember someone was filming it, and I was just really happy because I was an angel. And I remember doing this thing, and I don't know who taught it to me or if I just thought it looked really hot or something, but I was like doing this thing where I was like this. And then the cameraman zoomed in on me, and it was something like someone said, "Oh, she's got like this thing with her shoulders," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" And I just had this thing in my mind. I'm like a shoulder girl, and I don't know that name or that it stuck with me for quite a while. But
Mhm.
yes, when you start talking about Christmas, I have so many memories of performing, and I really did enjoy performing. I think that there was a lot of happiness, a lot of joy surrounded and connected to performing. And it was fun for us as well. I mean, it was a time I think that we actually learned quite a bit and gained a new skill as far as singing. I mean, you're an amazing singer now. I don't know if they nurtured that enough or if that was just intrinsic, something that you had. I think it is more. I really enjoyed dancing. At the same time, the performing side of it also had some things that were difficult to also deal with. It also came with some negatives. So I would say that it's kind of it's a bit of a mixed bag. I have wonderful memories, and it's a really beautiful, time. And like you said, that giving back, that sharing, that time
Mhm.
of just enjoying each other's company, and there's a lot of that I have, and then other memories too on the side. So overall, I think I do enjoy walking down memory lane and thinking about Christmas, and I'm really happy that we can do that today together. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when we were
I
younger, it was all chosen for us, right? So, for
right.
example, oh my goodness, this is something that still not bothers me to this day, but I kind of still have this little chip on my shoulder that I was always put as the shepherd or a wise man in the nativity play.
Oh,
Oh my God. We didn't bring like any photos, but maybe we can show some photos of
we can. We
the
do
different
have we have all of them.
we have okay. I know you hung on to a lot of those photos, but I
Yeah.
always got put as the wise man or the shepherd, and I
Mm,
always wanted like the I want to be pretty. So you seem to always get Mary, and
mm,
Mary had like she could wear her hair long, and she had
mm.
like those pretty colors. You were like in purple and blue and things like that,
Yes.
and you got to be all pretty and demure. And I was a shepherd who was normally in like brown, and I remember calling it like doo doo brown. Like I have to wear the doo doo brown costume. And I still have this memory that it probably plays into a little bit of my hesitance towards performing and what could go wrong on stage. But I remember I was one of the three wise men, and they made me wear this turban. And, I guess I was supposed to be Indian or something. And the turban was too big for my head. So, kind of, when I was walking on stage, I had to like stand up really straight. And then as we got to the manger where we're standing in front of you, and it was like so unfair. She gets to be married again this year. And we had to bow down and give you the present. And as I bowed down, my turban fell off and
Oh,
rolled off across
no.
the stage. And I was mortified. I mean, thankfully, I think it
Oh,
was it was a benefit dinner for, I think, like an orphanage. So it was mostly kids, but some adults there as well. And I remember
mm,
I was probably about 7 or 8, and I was so embarrassed, right? Because
mm,
I think one of the big things that we were taught very quickly was how to perform, how to present
mm.
ourselves on stage. We were always talk about stage presence, and
Oh,
you could never turn your back to the audience unless it was part of the skit. So we
right.
were coached a lot on how to appear in front of others.
You're
Right. And so
absolutely right.
even though there was, like you said, a lot of joy and a lot of excitement, that we got to be up on stage and look pretty and probably wear makeup and wear, some of our costumes are quite nice. But at the same time, I felt there was a lot of very heavy pressure put on us to appear a certain way because we represented certain people, and I think we were told we represent Jesus, right?
We
And so
represent Jesus. That's right.
represent
Exactly.
Jesus, and that's a big thing
That's
for a
a
young
big
kid.
burden to hold on your shoulder. If I do the wrong thing, people are going to get the wrong idea of who Jesus is, and then they may not feel that Jesus loves them. And oh, that's like the worst thing
It's
ever.
all my fault,
So,
right? Yeah.
yeah, as you're saying this, kind of the gravitas kind of settles a little bit because you're putting words to the sentiments that I was speaking of earlier, where that there is that weight, and there was this, I don't know, burden on our shoulders that shouldn't have been there, as
Yeah.
far as, the singing or what people generally do, which is, Christmas caroling or
Mm.
Christmas pageant or performance. First of all, it's something normally that children want to be a part of. They
Yeah.
want those parts. They want to try out for that role or that role. And even if you don't get the part that you want, there's still something that's fun and interesting and exciting and energetic about it. And I think the positives are accentuated, whereas the negatives, I don't really know in a, normal, regular setting what really the negatives would be so much. But for us,
Mhm.
it was what we do on stage. We smile, we perform, we're there, we are showing God's love and Jesus's light to the world. But then there was a complete disconnect between what we were showing to the public and what was going on behind closed doors or on backstage, so to speak. And that's the backstage, which I think that's the bit that sits a bit more with me. And
Mm.
probably I haven't had a lot of time to talk about it or explore it so much, because normally we
Yeah.
would just talk about, maybe the good part of it or the happy
Yeah.
parts. But you do mention something, I think when we got older, when we did have more of a role in what songs do we want to sing, what dances do
Yeah.
we want to choreograph, what kind of costumes do we want to wear, where do we want to perform, how do we want to style ourselves, who wants to sing what songs. When that was given to us, when we were able to make those choices, that's where I feel that kind of that weight and that burden of that, those parts that were really difficult to carry, those kind of went away. And I have many more happy memories. And that happened, I
Mhm.
think, when we were, teenagers, probably around the ages of maybe 12, 13, 14,
Yeah.
that age
Yeah.
range. And that's
Mhm.
when I have really, really good memories, yeah, of
Yeah.
Christmas and performing. And I mean, our mom was just amazing. She was the best. She was our momager.
Manager,
But in
manager,
America,
yes.
the reason why I laugh, because I'm thinking of other momagers who are out there, and I don't know if I can say that I think they, managed their daughters or their children so well as exploited them. But
Mhm.
our mom, she was great at finding venues for us to perform at, which was not easy because we didn't have, a huge marketing campaign. We didn't have an advertising agency. She did all
No.
of that work. She was able to
Yeah.
line up really good places for us to perform, places where we were respected, places where we were not, I would say, like taken advantage of, or,
Mhm.
she took care of us. She took really good care of us. She lined up those
Yeah.
places and we had fun. And I just have, like I said, I have good memories from our teenage years onwards performing. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. One of the stories, or I guess it happened, yeah, probably 3 years in a row where we got to sing at the Shangri-La Hotel in,
Yeah.
Shenzhen. So for
Shenzhen.
us, that was a really big thing, because I guess when we were younger, it was more charity work, right? So we were
Mhm.
singing at orphanages, and these places didn't pay us. It
Mhm.
was done as a charitable contribution to help others. And I can remember as a child, like going into some of these places and not wanting to be there
Mhm.
because, for example, some of the homes we went into, there were people there with horrible disfigurements, really bad, like third-degree burns, half their face were burnt off, people who were having epileptic fits on the floor. And as a
Mhm.
child, that wasn't discussed, right? We witnessed that, but
Mhm.
afterwards, when you're kind of like, what just happened? Like, I just saw somebody vomiting on the floor and had an epileptic
Mhm.
fit as a 7-year-old, and you're like, what do I do? And then it stays with you. So definitely as a kid, it definitely felt we didn't have much autonomy in where we went and who we saw. And
Mhm.
I guess for a lot of these things, when you're putting out, there also needs to be some self-care. You need to be
Mhm.
given back to and replenished. And
Mhm.
I felt we had like really busy schedules. Probably basically, I
Yes.
think all the month
Yeah.
of December, it was show after show after show after show, and sometimes 2 shows a day. From morning into the night. Um, and usually, I have memories of like us having to practice these shows, right? And that would normally start in September. And so we
Yeah.
were we were doing a lot of these performances and practicing. I think definitely as we got a little bit older and it stopped being about us being cute, and it was more
Mhm.
about, okay, you actually have to perform, and 10 of you have to be on stage and all, do the same choreography, and it became more, there's like definitely more pressure there.
Mhm.
And we definitely felt like we had to do a good job. It wasn't
Yeah.
just, oh, go out and look cute.
Mhm.
And I think also growing up in Asia, that was one of the things that, one of the big differences I noticed in Asia and the US, for example, that, when I
Mhm.
see a performance here, the kids are still, there is some order and some expectations, but it is more kind of look cute and just be in there to perform and enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Whereas in Asia, where we grew up, it was very much you must get things right. Oh, someone messed up there, start from the beginning and do it all over again.
Yeah. Oh, I
And this is
remember
where our
that.
was just like, this is like the 11th time we're doing this dance because one person messed up. And so, yeah, there was a lot of that.
And
But
that would
then
be
as
used
we
as a
go older,
punishment sometimes too, if you don't remember, like the stop, do it all over again. And then the one who got it wrong, they would be like,
super
there was a bit
embarrassed.
of
Yeah,
that.
because the
There was a
rest
bit
of
of
us,
that as well. Yeah, now as we're
yeah.
talking about it, I think we're kind of giving words or putting voice to those elements, which really were negative for us as children. At the time, you're just
Mhm.
going through it, but when you're talking about like not knowing these places that you're going to be going into and who you're
Yeah,
going to be meeting and what's going to be happening there, and no conversation around, uncomfortable situations or
yeah,
no guidance, no protection. And then now you're
yeah,
going into the practicing that even there could be so much pressure and guilt and
yeah,
shaming just surrounding just the practicing what we were doing at home for months before. So
yeah.
definitely, it was a lot to handle as children. And I think we did an incredible job considering. I mean, we have the pictures to show for it.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a cost involved that we had to carry, and maybe, our
Mhm,
parents or others as well. But yeah, I guess those are some more of the particular stories. But
mhm.
before we go on to like a particular story that we want to share, do you have any more other aspects of Christmas that you remember as far as family, meals, events, traditions, anything like that?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, we had it's kind of unusual. So, like, the things that really stuck with me, one of them is it's so funny because every time I cook now, I tell Mike,
Mm.
"Oh my goodness, reminds me of Christmas."
And she's an
And it's
amazing
because
cook, by the way.
thank you. Um, but when we were singing, right? So we were doing like choral, like I don't think anyone taught us how to do this. We were just like picking up stuff by ear, and if
Mm,
we started to sing more traditional Christmas carols. When we were younger, we were singing more of our, what we say, our religious group. They had their own type of music. And so it
yeah.
was based kind of on secular Christmas carols, but with also their own twist to it. And
Mm,
so we learned some of the traditional hymns, but then also more of the what we call, what was it, contemporary. I think that's what we named it, right? Contemporary Christmas music.
which
And
before that, before the point where we were a little bit older, that was like a no. You
oh
don't
yeah,
talk about certain things. Even now, sorry, I interrupted you, but even
go
now, when
ahead.
I start singing about Santa Claus is coming to town, I'm like, am I going to get in trouble?
Who's going? Are we going to get in trouble
So
for singing about Santa?
weird. We weren't,
Because we
Santa
never
was
really
not
talked about
supposed
that.
to, no. I mean, Santa was, who was Santa's in Christmas as far, he was the great usurper, you could say. He was the one who was coming
Yes.
in and taking Christ's place and taking everybody's mind off of the true meaning of Christmas. And they even
Mhm.
told us, like, we do not say Merry Xmas because X is putting a big X in the name of Christ's name. Christ, Christmas, Christ. They're trying to take Christ out of Christmas. So that's why we don't say Merry Xmas. We say Merry Christmas. And we don't talk about Santa either because Santa's trying to come in and steal baby Jesus's place. And
Yes.
there was no such thing as Santa. Santa was so hugely taboo. And definitely he is not
Yes.
coming to town. And so even now,
Yes.
like I'll be singing to Jane some song about Santa, and I'll be like, no, it's fine to speak about Santa.
Yeah, yeah. It's
They
that's
just
one of the
weren't
things I was
here.
gonna talk about, that
Yeah.
Santa, people ask me, like, "When did your kids stop believing in Santa?" Or, "When did you stop believing in Santa?" I was like, "I don't think I ever believed in Santa." To believe in Santa would kind of it's interesting because one of the I'm gonna go a little bit off tangent here, but one of the practices that I do, and we talk about kind of regulating your emotions and wanting to bring safety into your body, is think of a character that is like very nurturing or safe to you. And for me as a child, Santa was almost that magical kind of person who could Christmas magic and make things happen, because it seemed like for us, Christ was all about the giving and the giving to others and the sacrifice and the months and months of practice and the hard work and the stress. I almost connected Christ with stressful, it's all about giving, it's all about sacrifice. And Santa was about this magical person that could bring stuff to me. It was receiving. And so because we never really got that as kids, it was like Christmas is very much about others. It's all about sacrifice. And so that is one of the main things that growing up and not having to have this expectation of Christmas is the time to give back to others. I still think it's a positive, and we've almost gone too much in the opposite direction as a society where it's all about what can I get. But and we kind of had the opposite as kids. It was all about giving, and it was never about receiving anything. So I kind of found that nice, happy medium when I became a parent myself, and I realized that yes, Christmas is about giving to others, but it's also a time for nurturing and family and receiving all of these happy memories and all of these things. And it became much more of a special time of year for me because I created that for myself. Before it was all about Christmas is coming up. This means extra stress. Usually we always got sick, like really badly sick around that time of year. I think it was all the stress, always our throats. So this is one of the things that reminds me of Christmas. Garlic, ginger, and onion blended up with honey. It's horrible. But
you think of like, Christmas spices, gingerbread man, gingerbread houses, mince pie. What did you say? Onion, garlic,
ginger, onion, and garlic blended up together and mixed with honey. And we had to take spoonfuls of that every day, probably like 2 or 3 spoonfuls. And I mean, any of you health nuts out there, that's probably wonderful for your immune system and it's antiviral and everything, but it also stunk horribly. I don't think it was spicy because we mixed it with honey. But I remember just like walking around afterwards and having to stand next together to sing and be like, like our garlic bread. And so that is,
at least we were all
other people have memories of cinnamon and cloves and gingerbread. I have a memory of garlic, onion, and ginger.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
it's amazing you can cook with that anymore. Wow.
Yeah. Memories. Well, I said, open up the jar. I'm like, smells like Christmas. My husband's like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about our Christmases as children, some of our past memories, as well as some of the nuances of how it was for us growing up, because we didn't have a traditional upbringing. You could say whether that's a more Asian upbringing or whether that's a Western upbringing. On both sides, you could say that we experienced a lot of things that most children our age didn't really go through. And there were some really good and happy memories. And then there were also things that we had to, we are just now, we're still working through. And I think one of the things that I have really appreciated about what you're doing, Victoria, is that I think you started a couple years ago. Was it maybe like about 4 or 5 years ago?
About 2020. Yeah, I started.
Okay. And that's when you started, you told me that you were seeing a therapist and that you were learning things, and you kind of started on your own personal healing journey. And then you started to share things about what you were learning with me. And that actually, it took a bit of time, but actually the work that you started doing, the conversations that we were having started to get me thinking about some of the things that were happening in my own life. And I remember reaching out to you a few times and being like, thanks, I need a coaching session. And, there was this idea that, we're not meant to have dual relationships. We're not meant to coach our family or friends or do counseling or things like that. And while I understand this aspect, there is another side of the coin where these are skills. These are skills that are incredibly helpful. And if we all learn these skills, we can employ them with our, brothers and sisters, with our parents, with our children. It's not like we have to just be in a therapist setting or sitting in front of a counselor or with a coach for these skills to be used and for us to receive the benefit in them. So I actually was able to receive a lot of benefit just from, the different things that you were picking up. And you never like said, I'm a guru or an expert, or you have to listen to me. But you did share with me the different things that you were going through and the different things that you were learning, the different tools that had worked for you. And I remember, like, even after, could be like maybe a 20-minute or a half an hour conversation where you would just, like ask me a couple of questions and kind of lead me to a place that kind of I knew where I wanted to get to, but I didn't know how to get there. And just through your
Mm.
questioning and kind of leading and guiding me, I was able to reach it. And I did have a couple of times where I was just like, "Pooh, mind blown, like, oh my gosh, I just had a breakthrough." I wasn't
Yeah.
really in that whole space at that time, but I did really receive a lot of benefit. So I guess going back to, why we're here now is that we haven't always been in this place where you and I have had like an amazing sister relationship.
Oh no.
It's been a lot of work. But I
Yeah.
think that work has, first of all, been done, like you've done the work on yourself and I've done the work on myself. And we've been like really grappling and struggling and, not letting go of what do I need to do for myself so that I can be in a better position to have a better relationship with the people that I love.
Yes.
And so I think, we've had our private, personal battles, but then at the same time, another thing I really appreciate is that we haven't let go of our relationship. It's like
Yeah.
we've battled it out. We've had,
Oh
long
yeah.
texting conversations. And like sometimes like someone will come in the room and be like, "Are you still on the phone? Are you still texting that?" I'm like,
Yeah.
this is important work.
Important. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that it is important. It is important not to let go of the people who we love and our family and our friends. And sometimes those are the ones to say, I've had it enough. I'm putting a boundary here and I'm walking away. And I think especially that's very relevant at holiday time and Christmas times.
Oh
And
yeah.
we need to do that. We do need to put boundaries in place. We do need to protect ourselves. I do think that it's also important to say there's also benefit and um, there's something to be said about holding on to relationships, not necessarily working them all out in that moment
Mhm.
or thinking that you have to hash it out at that time and place, but
Yeah.
not letting relationships with our loved ones go so easily, or not kind of saying, this is not good for my mental health, so I'm just going to cut it off and walk away. I think that when you do that, yeah, you could get some immediate benefit or relief or whatever it is that you're dealing with, but you're also losing out on a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So coming back into these spaces where you do have conversations, even when they're difficult, even when, you really have to like struggle and grapple through them,
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of benefit in that. And there's benefit in that, especially when you have the right tools. So,
Yes.
and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that because in having honest conversations, and when you start to talk about, like, say, a particular story, something that has come up in your own life, you're not speaking generically anymore, but you're speaking about a specific incident. There are
Mhm.
certain tools that you can have in your toolbox that are really going to help you get through that conversation, be able to explore and unpack some of those things that, like you said, from our childhood that we never were able to talk with anyone about. Get
Yeah.
through it, understand it, and then also be able to kind of like ride the wave, regulate ourselves through those really difficult moments so that you
Yeah.
don't lose the goodness, but you're able to kind of hold on to that and then come through the other end alive, having
Yeah.
survived, but then with something good, something beautiful on the other end of that. So I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you specifically about that because I know that's, a lot of your work is surrounding those points. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about, I guess it always comes back to when I was trying to find my niche and I was like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. And those, what I realized, I was looking at all the symptoms, like all of the, okay, anxiety or setting boundaries or whatever, all of this stuff. And it all seemed to come back to connection.
Mm,
Everything came back down to connection. And I was just like, connection is just at the core. And, I talk about being a resilience coach, but really what I coach parents and kids on is building better connection.
mm,
And there is this definitely this trend in social media, and I see the definitely the benefit in it, kind of like what you were saying about learning to set boundaries with people who maybe just aren't there yet, or maybe maybe they are, God forbid, abusive or manipulative or whatever, and needing to set boundaries. But there is a difference between setting boundaries and cutting somebody off and going, you're out of my life completely. For me, that would be reserved for somebody who is actively abusive and actively doing harm in a very intentional way. Now, we have relationships every day with people where they do harm us, but a lot of it is unintentional, or a lot of it is coming from a place of their own pain. It's they're harming us, it's almost a byproduct, and it's because of what they're going through. And when we can understand that and realize that in some cases, yes, there's going to be abuse and there's going to be manipulation, but a lot of it comes down to what seems like misunderstanding, or people communicating in a way that is, not effective, or their defenses are up, or they go on the attack and they're aggressive. And that's not who they are all the time. It's just when it, maybe something about you triggers them, or some topic you bring up triggers them, and then they go on the defense, or they become aggressive. And so understanding that people are, we're human, all of us, and especially talking about after COVID and all of this stuff, when we were so isolated, and coming back together. And I don't know if it's the same in the UK. It probably is, but especially in the US, there is a huge divide of, vaccine versus no vaccine. Are you left, or are you on the right? Are you anti-gun or pro-gun? Or, it's just so many things that divide us. And now it seems to be feminists against males. And you have the Andrew Tates of the world who seem to hate women. And then you have the women who are like, yay, feminist, whatever. And it just seems to be so many things that are designed to divide us. And not many people are having conversations around, yes, there are so many things that divide us. And yes, you have your different points of view, but how can you hold all those things? You're not giving up who you are as a person. How can you hold all those things and still find commonality, still find tools and techniques to use that help us find the common ground? And nobody seems to be talking about that. It's all set boundaries, cut off your loved ones, cut people out of your life. It's all about disconnection. And I wonder, I don't wonder, I say kind of wonder hypothetically, but if that is causing so much of these, feelings of loneliness and people isolating themselves and not wanting to have conversations with people that might lead to some kind of healing and reconnection, because it's like, those take skills, and it's much easier to be like, I'm setting a boundary, I'm cutting you off, than I'm going to learn the skills to be in this difficult place with you. And vice versa, you need to learn those skills as well. It's not all on me. And how can we come together, hold our own individuality, and still manage to find commonality? So, yeah. Wow. And then, like you said, learning skills that when you're having these difficult conversations, stuff is going to come up. And this is what I focus so much on: emotions. It seems like, it's all over social media, but not many people actually practice it, especially in conversations, especially when you're having a difficult conversation with a family member and stuff is coming up and you're just like, I'm setting a boundary, I'm cutting you off. No, this is you, this is me. And there's not any, okay, whoa, I understand this is going on. What tools can I use in my toolbox to stay connected to this person and help myself through this, but also help them through this as well? It's this kind of, and they should do the same for you, right? So I think that's what this is really about, just talking about different tools and showing up, I feel like, in an authentic way, which is, I feel a lot of people are very defensive, because when somebody else is on the attack, that you don't want to show any vulnerability, right? You put up your defense as well. And in order for there to be connection, there needs to be vulnerability. Right. And so these tools do help a lot with vulnerability, both in your own body, when you realize, whoa, I'm really triggered right now, but also communicating that I'm feeling triggered right now. This is really tough that you're talking about. And I'm feeling this way. I'm telling myself these stories. So we talk about like the different levels that we, experience situations through, and
Mm.
one is somatically in our body. So we definitely feel
Mhm.
sensations like tight chest,
Yes.
and I'm holding
Yes.
my breath or clenching my jaw. Another
Yeah.
one is the emotions coming up, right? We're talking
Mm.
about I'm feeling anger, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling super unheard and
Right.
manipulated, whatever. And
Mm.
then also what, it seems to be a lot of social media, it's all about cognitive stuff, the stories
Mm.
that you tell yourself in your head, which is helpful. But I think a lot of us miss the what am I feeling in my
What
body?
am I feeling in my
And so
body?
this is
Yeah.
a
Right.
big part of the work I do, is that so many of us know what we're thinking, right? Okay, I'm
Right.
mad and I'm telling myself the story, and oh, look, it's just a repeat pattern of whatever happened in our childhood.
Mm.
But they're not really going into their body and being like, I'm feeling a super tight chest right now. I'm feeling betrayed. I'm feeling, whatever. And so
Mhm.
we're good at the cognitive part, it sounds like, but we're
Yeah.
missing the body, kind of what's going on below the neck.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of the work I do. And I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
just noticing and taking those few skills
Mhm.
when you're trying to work through a solution, yes, that probably take higher level skills, and probably that's where a counselor or a psychiatrist or a therapist would come in. But we're not talking about finding a solution yet. We're simply talking about noticing what's actually going on in the
Right.
situation. And that,
Mhm.
for me, doesn't take a therapist. A therapist can definitely help you because they're trained in that. But
Mhm.
why do we need to, this huge long wait lists, and so many people are struggling with their mental health because they can't see a
Mhm.
therapist or they don't have the
Right.
money to. These
Mm.
skills aren't exclusive to therapists and psychotherapists and counselors. If
Mm.
me and you use them as sisters and as a family,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my purpose, is bring these tools that seem to be gate kept a little bit
Big hit.
in the psychologist community of
Yeah.
only psychiatrists and only psychologists can do this. But
Mm.
these very simple skills, like anybody can do this, and I can teach
Mm.
them to kids, right? And once
Right.
kids start
Right.
in school, you see their relationships start to change.
Mhm.
So if kids can do it, adults can definitely do it as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. Oh, I love everything you've just said. That is it resonates so much with me, and it's really what I have found to be true in my recent experiences. And I really like what you said there. It's easy for us to intellectualize and cognize and think about, I know what's happening, but we're all staying up here, but we're not allowing ourselves to drop into our body because it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
those
Oh
emotions
yeah.
and to know that you're going to talk about something which is going to bring up, it's going to make you sad, it's going to make you fearful. Many times those are the root core emotions, but actually it manifests as anger, and it's just easier to be angry. It's easier to walk away. It's easier to just disassociate and say, you know what, I'm cool with it. I'm fine, and just walk away. But then you risk that loss of connection, you risk losing relationship, and you're just not completely whole either. You're just kind of living like a shell of yourself because you won't
Yeah.
allow yourself to go into those places that,
Yeah.
yeah, they are painful, they are difficult. But if
Yeah.
when you learn the skills and when you learn the tools, and also when you practice, what I found in my experience is the more I practice going into these, often difficult places,
Yeah.
you realize that actually I've got this. I can do this.
Yes.
And you
That's
kind of
it.
you give yourself this like, yeah, good for you, girl.
A
You
little
go, girl.
confidence boost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't need someone else to sit and charge me hundreds of dollars per hour. Like you said, that has its place and that's time. And I know both of us have benefited from them. But at a certain point, the locus of control, you've got to take it back. You've got to take ownership. You've got to be accountable for your own healing and your own relationships and not kind of always be looking outside for another solution. So I think that's something that we can practice with each other. One thing that we wanted to do today was actually bring a particular story of Christmas, say of our
Mm.
childhood or our teenage years, and just kind of like practice. Well, what would some of those skills look like if I were to share a story with you and you were to engage it, and then vice versa. And we've practiced some of these things before. We've learned about them. We are becoming, you could say, more practiced or adept at using these things. And when you kind of see someone else doing it and practicing it and modeling it, you can say, oh yeah, actually I've done that before, or I've noticed that before. And then you can kind of like tie it together and see, okay, well, how could I maybe do this in a more, cohesive or systematic way? Yeah, that may be something that, we can try today
Yeah.
in our conversation together. Okay, so we've decided that we are going to take off our Christmas hats because we're both very warm. Normally, I run very cold at Christmas, but because I've got this lovely roaring fire in the background, I'm actually all flushed and see my face is red. And anyhow, that's all right. Okay. Yeah. So what I was going to ask you, Vix, was when, let's say, we start to feel those emotions. So I'm telling a story and
Mhm.
I'm telling details of the story. I'm not kind of just glossing over things, kind of like, just we were speaking more generically, but I'm telling you like a specific story that I want to explore and I kind of want to find answers to. When I start to have like these sensations, like you said, something in my, throat, like, or I'm feeling a tightness in my chest or in my stomach, or I'm starting to clench, or I'm starting to feel a bit, jittery. Um, what's going on in my body is that I'm experiencing similar emotions to what I experienced as a child, but maybe I wasn't able to resolve it then. So kind of in going back and telling the story, I'm still at that place and I've not kind
Yeah.
of worked through it. So I'm telling the story to you because I want to work through it, but in feeling those emotions, that's going to make me want to shut off or run away or just like, or maybe try to just not get into the details, but then that's not really helping because it's in going into the details that I'm going to find some answers. So, what could I do in that moment to kind of help myself feel more at ease, more calm, kind of be a bit more grounded? Could you give me like, you know, a few tips?
Tools. Yeah. So I mean, I meet my therapist twice a week, and this is basically what we do. We go through some stories in childhood, and I
Mm,
feel all those emotions, or I feel stuff coming up. And for me, it manifests, and I cry right away. I'm a
yeah.
highly sensitive person, so I cry really easily. And there are definitely two trains of thought here. Some people want to soothe themselves. And I think, again, there's also a different level. Like we talk about pendulation or titration, which is like not going too deep into our experiences too fast, especially if they're very, very traumatic, because we do run the risk of re-traumatizing ourselves if we go back into it and we thought we were okay, and then we just open Pandora's box and all of a sudden everything's a mess again.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
going into anything that is like pretty traumatic, of course, you want to do it with a safe person, right? You don't want to share it with somebody who may be triggered by it, or maybe they were the person who were responsible for causing that pain, and you're bringing it up with them. You're not receiving a safe environment for
Right.
your story to land in, and it makes things even worse, right? So,
Right.
number one, always make sure that you're sharing it with a safe person.
Mm.
That's where a therapist or a psychiatrist or a counselor can help.
Mhm.
This could also be, a friend, but somebody that you trust and has some of these skills that we're talking about.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
not automatically going to jump in and try to fix your problem. They're
Right.
not going to project their experiences onto you of,
Mm.
oh, well, if I was in that position, I would have just done that. Because so we
Mm.
experience a lot of that. And we often feel when this goes on, like, hey, you don't know me. You don't know my life. You know me enough, but you don't know everything about me. And so it's not helpful, right? And that causes people to shut down.
Right.
And so oftentimes, yes, talking with a safe person first. And then also somebody, I would say, who can point out. Sometimes we get lost in our stories, right? And we just kind of like going into it. And when I tend to tell stories, I'm not even looking at the person, I'm lost in my own thoughts.
Mm.
Um, And so I would say number one, make sure you're having a safe person first. Number two is, do you want to experience the emotions? Do you want to work through them? I think I watched a video recently with Angelina Jolie, and someone asked her, like, how do you get through a hard time? And she's like,
Mm.
go straight through it. Like, don't avoid it, don't numb, which so many people tend to do, or even bypass, right? Oh, everything will be okay. The other person didn't know what they were doing, right? So much of our experiences tend to be people minimizing our experiences
Mm.
and trying to make us feel better, and which can be helpful, right? If your goal is I want to talk about it and maybe just dip my toe into a little bit, then you want to employ some tools to help soothe yourself, right? And not go too deep
Mhm.
into it too fast. Some
Right.
people are ready for that. And maybe they're like, you know what? I've got this. I know I have skills. I can use deep breathing. I can use meditation. I can use whatever to help me
Mm.
manage these big feelings. And
Mhm.
so if you're going deep into your feelings, I would say make sure, first of all, you're doing it with someone safe and reminding yourself that I've been through hard stuff before. I've felt difficult emotions before.
Mm.
So many of us feel, and this is often what I come through with kids, is that when they feel a really big emotion, they think it's going to last forever. Like, I'm going to be stuck in this and I'm never going to get out of it. It's going to last forever.
Mhm.
Once we realize that emotions are like a wave, right? We go up and down, we ride them. When we're at the peak of the emotion, so we're feeling super, crying, we're feeling super constricted, we're shaking, we can use tools like deep breathing,
Mm.
um, what we call like neuroaffective touch, or just sometimes giving ourselves
Yeah.
what we wished we had gotten at that time when it happened to us.
Mm.
So when you were a child and you were afraid and you were shaking, but now you're an adult, and
Mm.
reminding yourself that you are not a little child anymore. Like, I
Mm.
am a full grown adult. I am here for myself. And sometimes giving yourself hugs, holding yourself. My
Mm.
therapist often does put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly,
Mm. Mm.
right? Sometimes stroking yourself, so that could even be, you see a lot of people, shaking a foot or rubbing their
Mm.
legs. That is all our
Rocking.
body's
Mm.
way of soothing us, right?
Right. Right.
Rocking back and forth. You see a lot of
Mm.
people doing that.
Mhm.
Um, back and forth like this. Sometimes
Mhm.
you can use tapping. Of course, sometimes some of these tools take you out of the experience. Some
Mm.
of them could be like, okay, I see you're having a big moment right here. Let's use some of these tools to kind of soothe your nervous system because I see you're
Mhm.
getting too emotional, right?
Right.
Sometimes a good practitioner or a safe person will check in with you. I can see you're feeling some big emotions right now. I can see, you're clenching your fist, you're clenching your jaw.
Mm.
How are you feeling right now? How
Mhm.
how on a level of intensity of feelings, how big is it for you? Do you think you can manage this? Do you want to keep going? Do you want to pause?
Mhm.
Do you want to take some time to breathe? Right? So
Mhm.
a safe person is going to check in with you and notice. We can't see ourselves, right? We're in our heads a lot of the time.
Mhm.
A helpful person is going to notice these things about you, maybe pause you down if you're going too fast and just say, can we just like take a step right here? I can see you're getting really emotional.
Mhm.
I can feel myself getting emotional. If you're an empath, you'll feel it as well.
Right. Right.
And I'm feeling emotional right now.
Mhm.
Let's just take a couple deep breaths together, or even
Mhm.
put your hand on their leg. A touch is super helpful for a lot of people.
Right.
So, number one, having a safe person. Two,
Mhm.
that safe person has tools to mirror and notice, and what we call use immediacy. I see this is going on for you right now. How are you feeling? You need
Mhm.
help? You want to take some deep breaths with me?
Mhm.
And three, I would say at the end of this, if you've managed to get through it, almost going back and having a review of, whoa, what was that experience like for you? Like, I saw
Mhm.
you at one point, it was getting really intense, but then you managed to maybe use some tools and you got through it. What was that like for you?
Mhm.
And having you
Mhm.
reflect on that experience, because through that, you're going, oh, yeah, that was really tough for me and I got through it. And so just
Mhm.
kind of let's take a pin in this and let's remember that. So next time
Mhm.
you're in a hard place, you can remember that you got through it before.
Right.
So
Right.
those are all things that I
Those
find
are
helpful,
great.
both for myself and for, some of the people I work with.
Wow, those are really incredible tips. Okay, so you said the first thing is making sure that you're going to the right person, someone who can hold
Yeah.
you, someone who has the skills, who can mirror, what you're feeling, and who also knows how to help you regulate a bit when you're feeling a bit dysregulated. And then also
Mhm.
remembering that, I've been through this, I can do it, I've got this, not to, allow yourself to be too overwhelmed, but kind of remembering what you've learned, remembering the times that you've, made progress through it. That's so helpful. Okay, that's really good. All right. So I was thinking the next thing we could do was I'd like to bring a story, memory of
Mhm.
my childhood. and
Yeah.
talk about that with you. And then
Mhm.
maybe we could, just like model some of these things that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know sometimes like before you begin sharing or talking about things, sometimes it's like helpful to do a grounding exercise just to like know that
Mhm.
you're here in the moment, you're not there, you're safe. What would be like a simple grounding exercise that we could begin with?
It's probably the simplest one I always use is the five,
Yeah.
four, three, two, one. It's
Okay.
the noticing five things you can see, looking around the
Hmm.
room.
Okay. Do you name
Four
them or do you
things.
just kind of make a mental note of it?
I think mental note of it. For kids, it's helpful to speak it out, but for adults, it's just
Mhm.
simply noticing because it's just a mindfulness tool bringing you back to the present.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then four things you can hear. If you're in a really quiet
Mhm.
place, it can be difficult, but also like really tuning into really tiny sounds.
Hmm.
And then three things you can touch, or three things that you feel, even in your body. And two things that you can smell or taste. And sometimes even it's an absence of taste or smell, right?
Hmm.
And then finally, it's one deep breath. And so it's like really breathing in, filling your lungs all the way. Long exhale.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Kind of, offer a container to let you know you're here, you're in the present, you're safe, everything's good. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. Well, I thought of a story from childhood. And the interesting thing about this particular story is that I don't have so many details. It's more
Mm-hmm.
like feelings, I think. And we did give a bit of background earlier on, talking about how Christmases could be really stressful for us as children. So, this
Mm-hmm.
particular story, I think I must have been around 9 years old. It
Yeah.
was Christmas. We were performing in Hong Kong at the convention center. And I remember it being evening. And I remember that we had had a very long, very crammed full day. We must have done maybe 3 or 4 performances in
Mm-hmm.
different areas of Hong Kong. The travel back and forth, we would normally all be in a large van. And there was a lot of flurrying. There was a lot of activity. I just remember a lot of, yeah, driving back and forth. Um, and the particular moment I remember is it was very late in the day. It must have been maybe between 10 or 11 at night in the convention center. Christmas parties. I think it must have been Christmas Eve. Big parties. And I remember there being quite a lot of like bright lights. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I was that age, after a lot of performances, because I would be singing, I would be smiling. And the smiling part was really important for me because I feel that that's how I could show I was performing well. Even if I messed up with the dances or the singing, the words, the lyrics, even if my dress wasn't perfect or my hair, I do remember that if I just smiled like this head-splitting grin, I would get complimented for it, praised for it. It was really my thing. And in most of my pictures, you can just see me this big smile. But for some reason at this point, it was late in the day. I was really tired, and I also had a headache because of bright lights and noise, and just kind of like being overstimulated, too much sensory input throughout an entire day and probably an entire month of really
Mm-hmm.
hectic, busy schedules.
Yeah.
And it was the end of the day. And I remember either I stopped smiling or I said something wrong or I misperformed or did a misstep. And I remember, I don't even remember who the overseer or adult was who told me this, but I knew I had done something really wrong and that I was in big trouble. And this
Mm-hmm.
actually, and now actually that I'm telling the story, I now remember who the grown up is, as even as I'm talking to you. I remember who it is now. And this grown up said to me, she basically said, "You're in trouble for what you did. It was wrong, and you're not going to get Christmas presents tomorrow, or you're not going to be allowed to join in on some of the festivities or some of the things that we would really be looking forward to, like those
Yeah.
few little Christmas gifts that were for us as children, something special for us." That I would not have access to that because I had done something wrong. And I remember just being just heartbroken and really sad and heavy hearted and not knowing this at the time, but I was really beating myself up because I just thought, after all this, you couldn't just keep your act together just for a little bit longer. You did something wrong. And now look, you're going to miss out. You're going to lose out on something. And I remember being in a car park and us being loaded back into the van and just stepping into the van with like this huge, like heavy heart and pit, like huge rock in the pit of my stomach. And once we were in the van, I just remember thinking to myself over and over and over, and this happened to me often when I was a child. I would like go into these little mantras where I believed if I prayed enough or said this thing over and over and over again, somehow Jesus would come through for me and make that adult forget the naughty thing that I had done. And somehow miraculously the next day everything would be okay and I would get what I needed or get what I wanted or hoped for. And that was the moment, just climbing into the van, being super heavy hearted, knowing that we were going home, but knowing that I wasn't going to get anything that I really wanted or hoped for the next day. And this is the story. Yeah, that's one story of my childhood at Christmas that's kind of stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, as you're telling me this story, I kind of feel I don't know how old you must have been, but it's funny, as you were talking about it, I felt like, a lump in my throat, and I was like, wow, it's hard, right? So,
Mhm.
as you're going through this, have you told this story to other people before? Have you talked about it?
No, this is the first time. Yeah,
I think I
I
haven't
mean,
heard the story before. Yeah.
no, yeah, this is the first time that I'm talking about it. I mean, I've remembered it, but because it's not like nothing huge happened there, I didn't get, like it wasn't a huge event, but it's just when you kind of take the time to think about it, something comes up. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And so bringing yourself back to that time and like reliving these moments again, and I can even hear in your language you're talking about like climbing into the van and the lights being
Mm,
in my face, and
mm,
so it sounds like you're experiencing some of those, or you remember some of those actual somatic emotions in your body, or
mm.
somatic sensations in your body.
Yes.
And it sounds so you've already kind of tapped into, my face was hurting from the smiling, and I had a headache and all of those things. Telling this story and reliving some of those sensations in your body, what emotion would you say is coming up the first as you're talking about this?
Mm. Um, Heavy-hearted, I would say. And I was
Hmm.
9 at the time. I don't know that a
Okay.
9-year-old girl should feel so heavy-hearted. Like you can feel sad that maybe, you lost something or maybe even that your pet died, but that sensation that I had, that feeling, emotion in the moment, it felt much bigger and much more mature than I should have had at that age.
9 years
Yeah.
old. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a time when, so many of us are still like, some kids still believe in Santa Claus at 9 years old,
Yeah.
right? And yeah. And what story, we're going to go kind of to the head level. What story were you telling yourself? I mean, you did mention that, if I had just held my act together a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that was the story that you were telling yourself. And
Mm.
because you couldn't hold your act together
Mm.
longer and you got in trouble, what did that mean about you? Like what were you telling yourself about yourself? Because obviously you made it personal.
Yeah. Oh, definitely you're just basically you're stupid. Like, come on. Do you not know that if you do these things, you're going to get in trouble and you're not going to get the things that you want, the things that you've basically worked blood, sweat, and tears for, the
Yeah.
last several months. how could you be so stupid as to mess up when it mattered the most? Yeah.
Mm, mhm. Yeah. So
Mm.
putting a lot of blame on yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Huge blame. Yeah,
At any
yeah.
point, did you think that it maybe wasn't your fault, there had been a misunderstanding, that it was understandable that a child would be tired after a long day of performance? Was there any other alternative story you maybe were telling yourself?
No, at that moment, there would never have been blame or fault with anybody else other than me. I
Mm,
was the one who, at the end of the day, yeah, it all came back to me.
yeah. And
Mm.
that, you said like a 9-year-old girl, that amount of blame being put on you, that's something, especially around Christmas time, it's supposed to be exciting and fun, and you're feeling this dread as you get back into the
Yeah,
car going home,
yeah,
knowing that you don't really have a Christmas to look forward to.
yeah. I'm thinking like, Christmas Eve, like that's like the most magical time of the year. That
Well,
should have been the most magical time of the year for that 9-year-old. It should have been.
should have
Yeah.
been. Yeah. And obviously this memory has stayed with you.
Mm.
I mean, it's the first time I'm hearing about it. Yeah, I guess we have so many of these stories, but
Mhm.
this memory did stay with you and impacted you.
Mm.
Looking forward, and you were 9 then, but looking forward at the Christmases that followed, or
Mm.
um, when we're talking about performing and going out and smiling, since that was one of the things we talked about earlier,
Mm.
could you see how this belief of I messed up? It was, basically when it comes to that crucial moment, I messed up and
Mm.
I'm stupid.
Yeah.
You see any other areas of your life where maybe you took that belief into of when, or is it something that you actually did believe about yourself and you said, hey, this happened one time? Or was this like, oh, I always do this?
Mm. Um, I think that there are two ways that it impacted me. I guess the first way is the first one is that I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I
Mm,
required myself to be very perfect, to be a perfectionist. And that's,
mm,
continued out in many areas of my life. But then always kind of
yeah,
like a little bit of this like self-doubt, or just kind of like thinking that, nah, if it comes down to the wire, I'm gonna mess up. And this isn't even something that it's a trope that was reiterated again and again and again as I grew up. Like if it comes down to the wire, Michelle is going to be the one to mess up. And someone that I was very close to would often say, Michelle is the monkey wrench that's going to ruin everything, or that's going to, just always let there be a problem. And I was a monkey wrench in the works for so long. And I laugh about it
mm,
now, but I'm not really laughing. I'm actually thinking like, no, that wasn't right. I wasn't a monkey wrench. I was really trying my best, and there was just a lot of too much pressure put on me. And I was, I think, responding in a pretty normal, natural, childlike way when you have things that are
mhm,
on your shoulders that really shouldn't be there in the first place.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
but that inner voice that, you're going to mess up, and you're going to mess it up for other people too. that
uh,
that critique. Yeah, for sure.
mhm. And you said it shows
Mm.
up in other areas of your life. And do you feel that it affects, having that belief of I'm going to mess up? When it
Mm.
push comes to shove and when we're at that crucial point, I'm going to mess, I'm going
Mm.
to be the monkey wrench, right? You even got like a term for it,
Yeah,
which again, that's just, I mean, I think as kids, we often receive these labels, right? These things, these little snippets and words that stick with us and they come back right in these moments like, oh, I'm the monkey
yeah,
wrench.
yeah.
Could you see any other areas for your life where maybe you may have held yourself back
Mm.
or maybe not did what you were capable of for fear of being the monkey wrench? Like, can you see if it
Mm.
affected any other areas of your life as an adult?
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I would say, especially when it comes to like, different projects or opportunities or times that I wanted to join in, or I wanted to be a part of it, or I was really interested in it, but I always had that niggly worry that Oh, but when push comes to shove, Michelle, you're not going to be able to count on yourself. Even as I got older, I think there were a couple of youth camps, and I really wanted to go to these youth camps because it was pretty much just our family, and I wanted to be around other kids, my age. I wanted to make friends, but I was terrified of being called and giving the wrong answer or not knowing something and just messing up and just, being a huge embarrassment to myself and others. So maybe not others, maybe just myself, maybe others, maybe dad and mom. But it was more like I would just not even allow myself to go into those places because I was so scared of what could happen. And that carried on until, yeah, I would say a lot of my like preteen years or early teen
Mhm,
years. Yeah. Mm.
mhm.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things now is that obviously we develop all these beliefs as kids and we unconsciously believe them as we grow up,
Right.
uh, not going for a certain job interview because you're afraid you're going to say the wrong thing or not performing or not, so many opportunities we have and the decisions we make, we think they're just decisions, but we
Mm.
actually, when we dig down, we realize like, no, there's a belief there that
Right.
is causing me to make the decision whether to or whether not to.
Mm.
So part of, I guess, one of the practices that I like to do is what is something else? Now as an adult, you know better. You know that
Mm.
that was, you just said, a too heavy burden for a 9-year-old child. It should have been a time that was magical, but you were going home in dread.
Yeah.
So what is something that you can tell yourself, or would you like to tell yourself as an adult now talking to your 9-year-old self?
Oh, I think I'm gonna cry. Oh, I would love to tell her, my God, you were a star today. You were phenomenal. Look at all the places you've went and all the songs that you've sung, and everyone who just thought you were beautiful and sweet and angelic, and all the people who you made happy. Um, and look at your classmates, and they love hanging out with you and being with you, and they love, having you in their group. And you were phenomenal. You were a star, and you were tired too. You were really tired, and you didn't get enough rest. You didn't get enough to eat. You didn't get enough time to take a break or even use the bathroom. No one took care of you, and
Mm,
that wasn't right. That was wrong, and
yeah,
you did well. I'd
you
like
did
to tell
well.
her that.
So,
Yeah,
so
you did
there's like a
well.
core message that you'd like to tell that 9-year-old girl, that adult, instead of saying, Michelle, you made a mistake, you messed up, you're going to be punished for it.
Mm.
You being that, this is the big, so much of what I do, and I do it daily. It's not just in my therapy sessions, it's daily. I tell myself this, like, I
Mm.
have to be this wise adult. The adults that were in my life weren't always safe, and they told me things that stuck with me. I am that wise adult now. What can I
Mm.
tell myself when I'm feeling all this, and oh shoot, I'm gonna screw up, I'm gonna whatever. Even if it's one or two words you can just repeat to yourself when you feel that, oh, great, I'm going to screw up again, that one core message. And it sounds like you said you did well. And when that not, if you can, if you close your eyes and go back to that 9-year-old girl and you standing there as an adult and telling her, hey, you did a great job today.
Mm.
How would that have made things differently? How would have that have made and of course we can't go back and change the past, right? And we
Mm.
can't change the people who were in our past, but we can change how we feel about ourselves in that moment. And a little bit of our heart is healed, right? The wounded
Mm.
heart that we still carry on into our adult self, we can heal that 9-year-old self, right? And
Mm.
just let her know, maybe not completely, but give her some encouragement, because it sounds like
Mm.
when you're climbing into that band, you're like, oh, great, there's absolutely nothing to look forward to. So
Yeah.
if you could tell that 9-year-old girl something that would, maybe she wasn't going to get her presents, maybe she's going to miss out on some of those, festive happenings. But what is
Mm.
something that you could tell her that she could keep with herself, even as she's missing out on everything else?
Oh, that's tough. I don't know what would have been meaningful to her at that point. Um, yeah, I have to probably think a little bit about that one because I would want it to be meaningful to her. And at that point, I don't know if she would believe or receive anything good. It was really, yeah, I guess that's something for me to kind of just sit with and hold and continue to take on. Is that was I think it would have been really hard for her to believe that there was, any good thing about that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's a part of this. It's not
Mhm.
even we talk about, like pulling that, that little hole in the sweater, and then you pull the string and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so sometimes doing these kind of simple exercise and having these
Mm.
conversations and been like, hey, you're an adult now. What would you like to have told yourself at 9 years old or told yourself at 8 years old instead of what you actually heard?
Mm.
And what would you have needed to hear? Because what you would have liked to hear is like, you did a good job. What would you have needed to hear is usually
Mm.
something deeper. And
Yeah.
it's usually something to do with your character. And it's something that happens so much earlier, probably like 2 or 3 years old, these unconscious beliefs that we pick up.
Yeah.
And usually it has something to do with that, of who we
Mm.
are as a person, not our performance, not how we looked or what we did. It's who we
Mm.
are.
Mm.
And so sometimes just even having these conversations and being like, wow, okay, I know what I would have liked to hear, but what would I have needed to hear? I don't
Yeah.
actually know. And
Mm.
having a conversation like that and just being like, whoa, there's something that it goes even deeper than this. And this is going to be something I have to think about.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is, that's the whole point of I think these conversations. It's not to fix things, right? And
Mm.
that's why jumping in as a friend and going, oh, I would have done this and this and this. Great, it may
Mm.
fix things on a surface level, but it's not, the purpose isn't to fix things. It's to feel and to notice and to be like, wow, this goes way deeper than I originally thought. And it's
Yeah.
gonna give me some thought. I'm gonna probably notice these coming up in other areas. I'm gonna start to connect the dots that when I do this or when I behave this way or when I say this to that person, it's coming from that same place.
Yeah.
And that's all these conversations are really meant for, is just self-awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely
So I
self-awareness.
like the fact that you're just like, I don't really know, right? It's sometimes I feel like when having these conversations, we almost like, oh, I'm on the spot to say the right things. I need to give an answer. And
Yeah.
sometimes saying, oh, actually, I don't really know. I'm gonna have to think about that is
Mm.
harder, but it goes so much deeper and it's so much more authentic because you're like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, what would you have needed to hear? I don't know. I'm not sure. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's good enough.
Mm.
So yeah, thanks for
Oh,
sharing some of that. And yeah, some of those walking back down memory lane and realizing that, happy time of year, Christmas Eve also carries this really heavy memory with it.
yeah.
And going
Yeah.
into that and not being afraid to feel that some of
Hmm.
those emotions that come up again.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the really nice thing about having these conversations is that you realize actually it's okay. It's okay to have, let's say, that joy and that high and that beauty and that magic of Christmas. And it's okay to have those heavy moments that we either should have been protected from or somehow, they ideally they shouldn't have been there, but they were. And like both of those are part of my picture and a part of my story. And I kind of like hold that and not be worried about it or afraid about it, but just be like, yeah, that's what is. And, in that acceptance, I think that there's also something very healing about that. And it's through having these kind of conversations that you can reach that point where you can take that and kind of say, okay, yeah, I'm big and strong and maybe, grown up enough now to be able to hold those two parts, whereas as a child I wasn't. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much, Vix. That was really good. I feel really grateful for being able to share that story with you. Like I said, it was the first time I did. And thank you for the questions that you asked me and just being able to kind of explore what I was feeling and even bringing me to that end point where, I don't know all the answers, but I'm confident that, the more conversations like this I have, we'll be getting closer. We'll be getting there. And it's also going to be creating like empathy within us to have more of these conversations with other people. And I think
Yeah,
that's, it comes full circle in the end. So
for
yeah,
sure.
that is
Yeah.
our Sondervous, hope or vision for this is that we can create a space where we feel equipped, we feel confident enough to have these conversations with each other and create those spaces where there's, we're offering something and we're receiving something at the same time.
Yeah. And also realizing that it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you're going to be
Mm.
like, I don't have the right thing to say. I don't have the right question, right? Sometimes we can be too in our heads about, I must say the right thing, right? Not even give advice, but I must ask the right question. I know this was a big worry of mine when I first started out of, because I need to get a certain result. I was very, very results oriented, that I need to get them a breakthrough. I need to get them a aha moment rather than there isn't, yes, I understand there is a purpose to it, but sometimes self-awareness is the purpose. And that in itself is a beautiful thing. And I don't need to get them aha, win, yes, I got my eureka moment. Sometimes just sitting there and going, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know is the answer because it helps them do another deeper search. And that's exactly what they needed. So I think coming into the conversation, if you are genuine about wanting to hold space for that person and listen, and of course it's there, one of the caveats I give, it's very difficult to hold space for another person unless you've had someone hold space for you. So you know what it feels like. And this is where having these safe relationships with others who can hold space for you and you do the same for them. It's all about, it's not like 50-50. It's about sometimes I'm going to be in a better position. I'm going to be in a better state of mind to hold space for that person. And I know that I'm going to get my needs met at another point. I often find that a lot of people, when they come for conversations together, they're each trying to get their needs met in this conversation. And it's two people basically fighting. I want to be heard. No, I want to be heard. I want to be heard. And in the end, no one feels heard. And so going into it with I see my friend here is really going through it. And so this is my time to hold space for her, knowing that there will be another opportunity for someone to hold space for me. And also looking for those relationships as well. I know a lot of women tend to go into relationships where they're just the giver, right? You tell me all your problems and I'm always the one taking on yours. It needs to be reciprocal. And so that's also, either you go in as the dumper or the dumpee. It needs to be, in safe relationships where you get both. Yeah.
Wow, I like those terms, dumper, dumpy.
Dumper and dumpy. I think it goes for a relationship, but venter and ventee, I think you could say.
Yeah, we all do a little bit. All right, it's been so good to have this conversation with you, Vix, and thank you everyone for joining us. We hope that our conversation today was interesting, entertaining, educational, and warming and nurturing as well. And if anyone has any ideas or any feedback, as this is a completely new space, we'd love to hear what your feedback is, and just look forward to connecting with you when you'd like. All right. Merry Christmas, everyone. Bye.
Merry Christmas. Have a wonderful holiday. And creating spaces where you can hold space for others and also have others hold space for you.
All right. Bye.